Okay, it's Toby from Heavyweight MMA today with Max Hunter Leali. How are you doing, brother?
I'm all right, man. Just finishing up the camp. All the hard stuff, hard training stuff is done. Now it's the hard stuff with making weight and all that. So all
That's
the
it,
fun
man.
bits.
In the thick of things, man. And you're training at Bangtao MMA. Obviously, this is through the social media everywhere. Some of the big names are training over there. I saw a picture of you with Marab, and I'm sure there's a host of other ones that you've kind of worked with or seen there, right?
So Marab was over at Syndicate MMA before
Oh,
I
that
made
was
the move.
Syndicate.
Yeah. So
Ah,
I've been fortunate enough that I've trained at two of the big gyms and everything. So I was over at Syndicate from it was April 2022 until July of 2023, and then I went back home to Hong Kong for a little bit, and then I came out here. I was only supposed to be here for a month, and it's been 8 or 9.
yeah,
So,
crazy, right? So you obviously you built your base in Hong Kong, then you're training in the States at Syndicate, and now you're at Bangtao in Thailand. How do you feel the differences are, man? Like, where do you kind of enjoy training the most? Not to like make a judgment on these gyms and stuff, but where do you personally kind of like the feeling of?
man, like when it comes to gym culture and everything, I feel like there's always like a mix of things. And like I spent my whole life in Asia, so for me going to the U.S. and in particular going to Las Vegas, there was quite a culture shock, and things are just different, and as much as like I felt like I had like a good space when it came to training, like I loved working with the people at Syndicate. Man, when I would leave the gym, I just felt drained mentally, emotionally. It didn't feel like my place, so sometimes, you're in these environments where, I mean, like training at Syndicate was great. And I made amazing connections. I got to work with amazing people. I got to corner in the UFC twice and help out with, Alex Perez and Rob and, all these, amazing people, Cynthia Calvillo, Jeon Kim. I could list all these names, right? I'm very grateful to have learned from a lot of people and everything, but after a while, you could be in the best place in the world, but if it's not the best place for you, that doesn't make it the best place in the world. So I was fortunate enough that my old roommate and jiu-jitsu coach, one of them, Shane Shapiro, he contacted Frank Hickman out here because Frank used to do the wrestling for a little bit at Syndicate during COVID and everything. So between that and then Jeon Kim, she kind of helped set things up a little bit too. Came out to Bangtao, and again, like I just came out to see, man. Like when it comes to going to a big team or whatever, you never know how things are gonna go. But I don't know, man. Like I think I have a coach's heart as well as an athlete's heart. I got both, luckily, and so it just ended up being like, okay, cool. I'll help out. I'll do what I can, and then the next thing I knew, I felt like I was one of the boys. And
nice. Nice, man. Now, it's kind of interesting that you're from the States originally. I think you said you're 11 years old when you went to Hong Kong. And, being over there, and I'm not far away from Hong Kong. I've been in Macau for 17 years as well, bro. So I can't understand the cultural differences. And going back to my own country, it's like a bit of a culture shock too. But, funny little ties, man, because I saw you working early with Quinton. And I'd actually trained at Quinton's gym before as well, just casually. It was cool to see. I'd see you just starting out in that Shuto and whatnot, and now to see you fighting. Now to see you fighting in one of the biggest Australian promotions in Eternal, it's kind of cool to see you go full circle. I was looking forward to talking to you.
Well, thank you, man. I really appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, Quinton raised me, basically. Like Quinton and Phil, I am who I am because of them. You know, versus performance will always be, you know, that home team and everything. It's just like now for me, it's versus and Bangtao, and I'm grateful for that. You know, obviously versus is more like a legacy thing, you know, and it's one of those things where like Quinton raised me up since I was 13, and then I didn't leave Hong Kong until I was 27, and I went from being, you know, student to athlete and coach. But after a while, I just sort of felt like, man, I wanna see it how I do outside of this and everything. And also, I had 2 ACL surgeries, and it was COVID and stuff. I had a 4-year layoff from MMA competition, and I just, after a while, it was like I could stay and teach and be a coach, but I felt too young. And you know, I'm only 29 now, and I left 2 years ago. You know, I just turned 27 when I left. So for me, it was my opportunity to see, you know, where I stack up, and I'm really grateful for the fact that Quinton and Phil, both of them, they gave me the skills and knowledge to be able to train with world-class people. Like, small gyms can do that. It's just once you get in the big gym, I really feel like they have the extra knowledge and everything, and that's where you can match up and you can see, okay, this is where I am with a UFC guy. This is where I am with this and that. So
yeah. When I first came to Macau, Quinton was one of the only MMA guys around anywhere. So I had aspirations, being a stand-up guy, to actually have an MMA competition. So I went over there every weekend for a while. And the thing that cut it short was I broke my leg training in Quinton's gym, actually. I had what's it called? The fibula, just the fibula, but still it was a clean break of the fibula. It just kind of put me off, and I never returned to having MMA aspirations after that.
Yeah, man. Back then, you know, we had a lot of Versus had a lot of MMA fighters fighting at that time, and it was a great spot, like probably the best spot in Hong Kong, especially at that time for MMA. And I still think it is, but I'm biased, you know. But yeah, I mean, like those Shuto routes and everything, it's crazy to think like, you know, Hong Kong's first amateur bantamweight champion, first person to represent Hong Kong in Japan, and now we're here like 8 years later, 6 years later, something. I don't know, but
it's nice, man. And I know we're not going to talk about it much, but you're fighting on Eternal 85 for the Australian Flyweight Championship against Anthony Drillich. That's a big accolade if you can secure that belt, bro. There's a few people from Eternal that have obviously gone to UFC. There's a few guys, Stephen Erceg, you know, Jack Della Maddalena, amongst a couple others. So it's a good belt to have if you can secure it, bro.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's, to me, you know, man, like I used to be very forceful in the things that I wanted, my long-term goals. I used to be very forceful. And then when I started accepting the things that came, and I started accepting, like, let's just be the best me, that's when things really started coming. And I never expected, like, to get this. I'm very grateful for the opportunity to take this belt. and I really believe that I will, because I train with the best. And man, like, when you faced your own demons, no one is scary, because you face your own demons. That's the scariest thing that you can face, right? And yeah, it's just like I'm just excited for the opportunity, and I'm excited to be able to be Bangtao's first homegrown MMA champion, and bring a belt home for Hong Kong, dude.
Man, the only thing when you're saying that, I'm just thinking, if I was fighting Drillich, I'd also be a little bit concerned about that hand of God. But you fought people before that had big punches too. But I just seen him that flatline the last guy, so it's something to think about.
Yeah, I know. No, and look, he's very good with that hand and everything. So
yeah,
we've definitely game planned, and we definitely have, we have an idea. We have our scout reports. We've done our work,
Yep.
And that's the thing. We have the resources to do that work.
Yep.
How do I put it? I have enough faith in me and enough faith in this team that, that hand's a problem. Everything else about me is a problem.
Yep.
And
exactly.
I believe that.
Nice. Hey man, jumping off the topic, because we said we weren't going to talk too much about your fight coming up. I want to delve into Hong Kong a little bit. So you went to Hong Kong young, you started doing rugby, you had a fight in rugby and your dad pushed you into training. You started kickboxing first and then went on to BJJ, MMA, etc. Why didn't you try anything like Wing Chun or something like that that's real Hong Kong born sort of martial art?
You know what, we had a couple of Wing Chun black belts that came in, and they did teach me a little bit of chain punching, a little bit of this and that. I guess my dad, he just wanted me in kickboxing, and then one day I remember, I was playing rugby, got in a fist fight, put me in the kickboxing, and then one day I remember watching Quinton doing PTs, and this guy's doing double legs, like boxing and then shooting. And I was like, what's that? And they said, oh, that's MMA. I was like, can I do that? And I kind of looked at, I think it was my mom had picked me up or something. I looked at her and she's like, yeah, you can do that if you want. And so we booked a session with Quinton, and man, that was that. Within, I think, 6 months, Quinton had left to start Versus, and I just followed him there. And I remember I started doing my research and falling in love with the sport. And I remember watching Forrest Griffin versus Stephen Bonner. I remember watching that fight in particular and looking at my mom and being like, I really want to do this professionally. And she's looking at it and she's like, if you want to do it, then you do it. And you have to, commit to it. And it's been 16 years. I committed to it.
Yeah, for sure. It's good, man. And being in Hong Kong, man, there's a history of the gyms. There's history of gyms competing. A lot of the gyms are in Macau and Hong Kong have got links to the underworld and the triads and gangsters and whatnot too. Have you seen much of that? Because it's obvious if you're over here, you kind of know, right?
Yeah, the thing is that training and triads go hand in hand, right? In particular, I saw a lot more in the Muay Thai scene.
Yeah.
So, because I've had 12 professional Muay Thai fights as well. So, when I would fight Muay Thai, that's when I'd see a lot of the, the triads and everything. Oh, wow, or whatever. And they got the chops on their arms and stuff. But, I also, I lived in Tisawai, so that's got a pretty big triad run and stuff like that. Don't borrow money and they don't bother you for the most part. And obviously there's been things that have happened. We've had, promotions get in trouble. We've had this, we've had that. And I think there's been mishandling in Hong Kong, which unfortunately has led to, somewhere at one point, One Championship and Legend FC were going hand in hand with each other. And it looked like Legend actually was going to win out. And then there was just, mismanagement with money, with triad dealings, with this, with that. And the next thing you know, Legend, the guy dips and Legend's dead, and one championship is what it is today. So, I really believe that Hong Kong, it's possible to build that MMA scene, but just nobody seems like they know how to manage it properly once they get into it. And I think part of it is they flirt with that underworld a little bit, and then they get bit, and it does all go hand in hand, but you got to be smarter, man. I don't know. Like, I'm not smart enough to do it myself. I wouldn't take that on. But, it's unfortunate to see where we're at in Hong Kong with MMA, but hopefully it'll get better.
Yeah. And it was like probably about I'd say it would be, I don't know, maybe 15 years ago, there was a good Muay Thai scene over there to watch. Like they were bringing in a lot of international fighters with that. I think one of them was called Leali Fight Night or something. They had lots of these guys coming from Australia, coming from different countries to fight the local fighters. Really good. And what we're talking about, the gangster sort of thing, a lot of them over here, I'm not so sure of Hong Kong, over in Macau, a lot of the gangsters hire bodyguards from Thailand. So all those Thais came and they're teaching in the gyms and training to keep themselves sharp and also fighting for their bosses sometimes. So I think that's what led over here to having quite a lot of Thais around, and might be the same in Hong Kong,
Yeah, I'm sure. The Muay Thai scene in Hong Kong has always been pushed. It is the sport of the triads, right? So because of that, the roots of Hong Kong, fighting sort of come from that. They used to bet, and the triad leaders used to bet and sort of try to take guys based on how they were doing on the Muay Thai scene. And obviously it's not really like that anymore. That was 70s, 80s. But it's at a point now where there's, legacies. And there's obviously certain brands in Hong Kong that are bigger affiliates towards the triads than others, in particular, you have some of these brands, and that they're triad run, and they have 5 or 6 different gyms, and they own all of the space, and you're like, in Hong Kong, that's just not possible, man. Not unless you have backing. So, good for them. They're building their brand, and they have built their brand and everything. And they're there to stay for the most part. It's just all the smaller gyms. Like, if Versus could have bought its space ages ago, it would have been great. But unfortunately, it's Hong Kong, man. Rent keeps going up and up and up.
Space is at a premium, man. I've been to a couple of gyms over there just to train casually here and there when I've come over for something, and they're tiny spaces, right? Like packed out little office spaces that one class comes in, then they roll out, the next class is rolling in, and they just pack these little rooms. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, man. And I mean, during COVID, I matted my apartment, and I just had mates coming in. We were just training, and it became one of those things where, we were in a little living room, man. My flat was only 500 square feet, which in Hong Kong is pretty good, especially when you're on the main island. But you get so used to being in this cramped space with all these other people and everything trying to train, because, Versus will get maybe 20 to 30 people in a Muay Thai class or something, but there's not enough space for, 15 groups of people, and everyone's just bumping into each other. So, it's a Hong Kong problem for sure. But that's one that's not very solvable, unfortunately, right now.
Bro, you mentioned Legend FC before. Did you ever watch any? Because you're only a young fella then. That was only when you were just starting kickboxing when Legend FC was around.
I did watch Legend FC. I was there for Planet Battle, for Legend FC. I remember watching... I watched Robbie. I watched Whittaker fight at Legend. I watched Leach. I watched Kai Kara France. They all were Legend FC guys. And
tell me about the Kai Kara
crazy.
France fight, bro. Was the Kai Kara France fight that you saw in Hong Kong where you got knocked out?
Yeah, I believe so.
There was one fight where he fought a Filipino guy called Delamina, who's here in Macau working, and he was Kai Kara France was beating him up for like 2.5 rounds, and he just hit him down and just kept punching him, and he got like a TKO. I was actually in the corner of Kai Kara France that day, man. I was lucky enough to be helping out.
Where were you?
Yeah, it was cool.
Man, it's crazy. Like I found like a pamphlet or something, like one of those booklets that they always print and everything, and I remember it was Kai Kara France was on there. I was like, man, when I was a kid, I had no idea. Well, of course, like you have no idea who someone's gonna become as well. Even Whittaker, Whittaker got guillotined and choked out when he was in Legend, and Leach was champ. And I remember all that.
He was cocky. And actually on the same card as I mentioned before, Dan Hooker also fought, and he also got knocked out by a Chinese guy. So they had their wins, they had losses, but interesting, like the way it all connects up, like I'm connected over to you guys there. I'm connected to New Zealand through these guys from them fighting here. It's cool, man. Like we all sort of connect, like you said about the MMA community and hooking up with people and the relationships you develop. It's an amazing sort of community. Like we all have these link ups all around the world, it's cool.
Well, it's funny because in 2018 there was an award ceremony for the Fight Nation. They did an award ceremony, and my coach George Hickman and we met back in 2018. He won the Coach of the Year and everything, but it didn't register in my mind who he was and stuff. And then he and I something came up, and I was looking at old footage, and he and I are standing on the stage together because I won some Reader's Choice Award. I was nominated for I think Rookie of the Year or something, and I ended up winning something else. And we're standing on the stage together, and I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Like, I never would have thought that he would become my head coach, 7 years later or something.
Yeah, so the links, man. Also, I was going to ask you, did you ever train with Daniel Pereira? He was BJJ coach. He used to deal with Quinton a bit. I think they used to train together sometimes a long time ago.
I feel like they probably rolled together, but I was probably too young or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't remember him. To be fair, if you show me a photo of anybody, I'll probably go, oh yeah, I remember him around or this or that. But
No worries. All right, man. Hey, just talking about your goals, man. You mentioned about obviously right now you're focused on Eternal. You got a chance to be a star in Eternal. You're also interested in fighting in Ryzen if you can, as being a nice promotion in Japan, and then and also open to ONE FC, obviously UFC, any of these big promotions. Right, that's your goal for the future, the next up and coming couple of years.
Yeah, I mean I want to take what comes, man. Like that's what I've found is I want to be a genuine me, and I want to be the best. And if that takes me to the UFC, if that takes me to, I mean, obviously it's a dream to fight in the UFC, but to be honest, those green gloves look pretty dope too, and I don't want to push anything. I want to take what comes, and I'm gonna succeed either way. That's the way that I look at it.
I'll tell you what would be sick, man. Like a few people I've talked to have fought in Lumpini doing MMA, bro. Like how good would it be to get a shot over there on a Friday night fights, get a fight in Lumpini, being a guy from a Thai boxing background. It'd be so cool, right?
Yeah, it'd be dope, man. I definitely look forward to that if that came up, anything. At this point, I just want to win this belt. And, we'll see what comes. I win this belt, and there is a thing in the contract that I have to defend it within 6 months. But I'm just going with the flow when it comes to all of this, because when it comes to a top brand, that's the goal, a top brand. It doesn't need to be a specific brand. I just want to be in one of the best brands in the world, you know, and this is an amazing platform that I'm very grateful towards Eternal and the O'Neill family for, you know, being willing to give me this opportunity, because it's not something that I ever expected or pushed for. I had 8 fight cancellations this year, and it was frustrating. It was just again and again and again, and Eternal was the only brand that they had reached out to me. And originally I had said, oh, well, I really was trying to fight, you know, late April or in May or something. June 8th is a little bit past the schedule that I wanted. But everything kept canceling. And Eternal, they were the ones that kept contacting. And they contacted George and they said, you know, hey, you know, we would love for Max to fight for the title. And
nice.
You know, sometimes I really think, like, you know, whether it's God or the universe or however you want to put it, sometimes things are meant to be. And I could have, you know, if 8 other fights didn't cancel, I wouldn't be here right now. So, you know, I'm grateful for this opportunity, and I plan on, you know, taking it.
No, it'd be cool, man. Also, the relationships help, man. Something I've learned in Asia, you were there a bit younger than me, but I've been here for a long time as well, is the importance of relationships. And the Hickmans and everyone link into Eternal through, like, Volkanovski's freestyle gym, etc. A lot of links ups there might have helped along the way, bro.
Yeah. It's crazy. You know, it really is 7 degrees of separation, and half the time I feel like we're all a lot closer than 7. You know, everybody knows everybody, especially once you just have been around a little bit, you know. So it's I'm grateful. I'm grateful for this team, my old teams. You know, I was just a little shithead in Hong Kong, man. Like, just getting in fights at school and in rugby, and then the next thing I know, you know, 16 years and we're here. So
nice. All right, man. Thanks for your time, man. I wish you well with the future, but also particularly wishing you well in Eternal 85 Australian Flyweight Championships, man. I hope you bring the best of yourself to the fight, and best of luck in the fight, bro. And I hope I can talk to you again at some point, bro.
Yeah, we'll talk again soon. Thank you very much, man.
All right, man. Thanks for your time, mate.